Welcome back. I'm wearing a Grand Rapids Griffins jersey for this. The Detroit, so got Detroit hat on and all that. I don't have a Grand Rapids hat. It's fine. And this is being brought about because the AHL has kind of tipped their hand. They're targeting a February 5th start date. Remember, it was December 4th. Now we're back to February 5th. And again, this is for people who said, "Hey, let's just have a season in regular and just we'll wipe out the playoffs." And this is why it didn't happen. So the question now becomes, will NHL follow suit? Now, Bill Daly has already said what the AHL does doesn't necessarily add up to what the NHL does. The AHL, gate revenue is required. The NHL, it's nice to have the gate revenue. It eats up a huge part of their overall money. About 38% of their money comes from gate revenues. About 50%, according to Gary Bettman, overall comes from the fans, which I'm thinking includes merchandise, which is why you can look forward to about 865,000 different jerseys being revealed between now and January 1st. I'm overestimating it by a little bit, but it's going to feel that way. So what Dallas did today with the green and black is just the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be a lot of new jerseys, and this is part of the reason why. You need to generate more revenue. So don't be surprised either when the NHL comes back and at some point soon they put ads on jerseys, as we've seen in every other league. Now, the plan with that has always been the ads will not appear on jerseys that you buy from the NHL. And not only that, but if they're embroidered on, you can just whip that right off of there, right? In most cases, unless it's actually part of the print of the jersey. But the NHL, while it's looking for more revenue streams, which jerseys are going to help with, and maybe extra advertising is going to help with, the AHL doesn't have that much. Part of the reason why I've been buying AHL jerseys, and it may be a drop in the bucket, it may not be a lot, is I'm thinking, this is a league that shut down and has been shut down since March. They didn't have a playoffs. This league is probably losing a lot of money right now. So if I have money that I can throw into a jersey here and there to expand the collection and to support the AHL and bring more awareness to the American Hockey League and its product, I should be doing that. So that's part of the reason why I make sure I'm wearing AHL jerseys and just the general videos I do more than I ever have. Never got AHL jerseys until this past summer. And that's a big part of it, is the financials for them. And publicly, the NHL is still saying January 1st. But we know it may not be January 1st. Now, if it goes till February 1st, that's 100 days from today, October 28th. 100. Which means, from a channel's perspective, I would have to fill 100 days of videos until we get back to hockey. I'm not as worried about that now as I would have been, say, in March. So between March and August, I saw what gets eyeballs and what doesn't within the realm of what I do. So I don't do like the weird trade speculation and the crazy trades and what if Eichel was traded for all the mascots in the NHL and Buffalo played with a team of mascots? See, now people are going to want to see that. But I don't do that kind of thing, and I know that would get a lot of eyeballs. But the current event seems to help, and even if it's a current event that I've looked at and gone, I don't know, this is going to get any attention, and it does. The historical videos don't. And that's just the reality. The historical videos, as much as I enjoy putting them together, there's a lot more work going into that. There's a lot of preparing all the boards and all that, and then the view counts come in and they're low. 2 years ago, I did the videos on the NHL's year by year history, and while there are people who love that, when I looked at it the other day, I looked at some of the videos, especially early on in that playlist, and over the last 2+ years, they've made maybe $10. So again, in between now and that 100 days from now, if that's when we're going to get the NHL back, I'm going to try to do as much current events as possible, which means, covering other leagues and stuff going on. Just some fun stuff. Now, let's get back to this, which is, let's say that February 5th is where the NHL has the start of their season. I think you have to end the regular season by April 30th. 48-game schedule, that'd be an 84-day season. This means that if you're looking at how many games per day, for each team, it'd be 0.571, so they're playing more than once every 2 days. In a normal season, it's approximately 0.445. So this means players are going to be playing a lot more. And when you factor in that we're not going to have the full-on bubbles that we had for the return during the summer, it's going to be a challenge to get all these games done. I don't know if they'll do 3 games in 3 days for some teams, but 4 games in 5 days I think probably happens. So it's a squashed season. It's going to be tough physically for these players because some of these guys playing February 5th won't have played a game that's meant anything since March 10th or 11th, right? So again, ideally, you'd have the schedule go from January 1st to April 30th. And again, I've got April 30th on there because they want to get the season done before the summer. And we've talked about, well, the ice conditions during the summer. If you don't have fans in attendance, that doesn't make a big difference. But during the summer, we're thinking things are going to be where you can have fans in attendance, so that does become a problem. And so I would think you still have to have the cup awarded by July 1st. People have looked at the Olympics and said, well, if we have an Olympics this summer, which is still an if the Olympics come next summer, then you have to have the cup awarded before that because NBC has the rights to the Olympics, and they're not going to show NHL hockey instead of the Olympics. It's not going to happen, and the NHL isn't going to draw against the Olympics. Now, I don't see this as them having to follow the NBA's ideas here. The NBA wants to start in December, and the NBA's plan is to have a 70-game season. I just don't see how the NBA is necessarily going to make that work either, because the NBA is not going to be able to have fans in attendance. The one difference is the NBA can have a more robust season. You don't have the Canadian crossover, the border problem. The Toronto Raptors basically likely wouldn't be playing in Toronto. The Toronto Raptors would be moving somewhere else, and I've seen supporting the idea of Kansas City having the Raptors for this coming season. So you could still have everything on the American side of the border. The NHL doesn't have that. So the border, the separation between Canada and the States that is still there, that is likely still there right up until the new year, is going to cause an issue. And it's going to cause a major issue that is as major as the AHL not being able to exist without fans in attendance. So if this went from January 1st till April 30th, that's a 119-day regular season. So if you had 119 days, so you've got an extra 35 days, you could have a 60-game season. You could maybe have 65. But anything that's much more than that, and you're pushing the players to play way too many games. You're already going to have injuries as it is with 48 games in a squash schedule. Now, the reason that I'm saying April 30th as a drop-dead deadline date for the playoffs to get started, at least you have all your matchups set, is because if the playoffs start May 2nd and go to June 30th, that's a 59-day period. So I'm saying if the season ends April 30th, you have your day off May 1st, and then the playoffs start May 2nd. And it gets really, really tough from there because 59 days to decide a Stanley Cup winner, that's not that many. It's around the same number of days that we had in the play-in round and into the playoffs where you go from the start of August till September. But this is different. This is only 16 teams. There would not be a play-in round in 2021, and I don't think the NHL wants to have that because we're not going to have the bubble environment. We wouldn't have the separation between the regular season and the postseason. Everybody would have played the same number of games. You're not going to have the controversies that we had in 2020 regarding who does or doesn't make the playoffs. So I think you'd likely see back-to-backs a lot. So I think it'll be back-to-backs with the 8-team divisions. That's easy. But the 7-team Canadian division, gosh darn it, those Canadians, it gets more difficult because, of course, you have an odd number of teams. So scheduling would be more of a challenge with the Canadian division than with the American divisions where it's 8s. So next year, you'd have 4 divisions of 8 teams. Scheduling becomes really easy if you want to chop things up that way. And if you want to admit, maybe the league's better off if you have West play West, East play East, and you really cut down on travel that way. But I know, fans don't like that. Fans get mad when I mention it. It's fine. I understand. I get it. But I think that at some point in time with that number of teams, it would make more sense. Because when you've got 32 teams in the league, if you're playing each team twice, that's 62 games right there. It doesn't really allow for a lot of robust rivalry making. It just, yeah. So anyways, now I've split up the divisions, and if you disagree with the divisions, okay. So all of Canada, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal in the north. And then I just went from memory with this. In the east, I'd have New York, both the Rangers and the Islanders, New Jersey, Boston, Buffalo, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Washington. I put in there as well. In the West, Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, Minnesota, Columbus, Nashville, Vegas, and Colorado. Vegas, I was torn on whether or not to put them in the West or put them in the South, but the South has Carolina, Florida, Tampa, Dallas, Arizona, LA, Anaheim, and San Jose. And so while Vegas might fit in with the South because it's desert and all that, the reality is they're more suiting of the North. I mean, Carolina, I think, is more northerly than Vegas, but to put Carolina in the West wouldn't make any sense. And then if I put them in the East, then I have to move somebody else around. So I thought, nah. So that's my guess. And if it's wrong, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference to this video. And then top 4 teams in each division would make the playoffs. So that way you have 16. And then it would be seeded 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3 inside their divisions. So you don't have to worry about cross-border at all until the conference finals of the Stanley Cup playoffs, because these teams would only play against each other over either a 48 or 60 game schedule. The semifinals you could have then decided by the regular season records, the first ranked team versus 4th, 2nd versus 3rd. And again, people would argue, well, that team shouldn't be that high because they had an easy division, and this team's lower because they had a tougher division. It's not going to be perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect playoff format. It's never existed. But you'd have it that way. You'd have the semifinals and finals in likely one location, sort of like what we have with Edmonton. But you would likely have it that way, unless by the time we get to the semifinals and the finals, it's not a problem. You can cross the border. You don't have to worry. All of this starts to go away. So eventually in 2021, we should see fans back in attendance in pretty decent numbers. We're seeing fans in attendance last night's baseball game, for instance. There was, I think, 16,000 allowed at Arlington. Indoors makes it trickier. It definitely makes it tougher. Indoors and a smaller building makes it a lot tougher. But I think we'll see some sort of limited attendance. And then that attendance revenue, I don't know if that's going to be shared. Like, for instance, for teams in the South, if the southern locations, minus California, I'll say, yeah, you can throw 6,000 people into those stadiums. Sure. Those owners now are making a lot of money that the teams in Canada likely aren't making. So there's a big imbalance there. And I don't know how you'd even that out. I don't know if you'd care. But keep in mind, the CBA was signed with the idea that the salary cap was staying flat this year and next year at the very minimum because they knew they were going to lose money. So, yeah, I mean, that's just a rather rough guideline of how I think this could work. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And yes, if the National Hockey League called me up and said, hey, so do you want to take part in our figuring out how to make this work? Yep. You want to be on the Zoom call? Absolutely. I legit would do it. I don't see that happening, of course, because while I may have 168,000 subscribers on YouTube, I'm a YouTuber. So I would expect that the NHL and the NHLPA will come up with some sort of a guideline on how this is going to work. But I do think the divisional games are going to be the way of it. And just think of the intensity of the matchups between the Rangers and the Islanders by that 6th or 7th time they're playing each other. Just think of the intensity between Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver and Edmonton, all these teams being in the same division. Could be a lot of fun. Now, again, it depends on whether or not we have hub cities or whether or not teams are going to play in all 31 of their home rinks. But the February 5th date, I think, is important for the AHL because of the attendance. The NHL may be willing to play without fans in attendance for around that first month. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.